Hello everyone, welcome back to the Football Tribe YouTube channel. Robert Kesakos is your usual suspect. Welcome back to yet another episode on your favorite football updates channel. And today we will be discussing who have been the top signings in the Premier League. We'll stick the number 2, maybe 12. I thought I would do a top 10, but then I realized there's some names that are omitted. Maybe we'll consider them as honorable mentions. But here we'll be ranking the top 10 signings. Now, these are much dependent on what clubs needed to do in their transfer window, what the objectives were, where they needed to strengthen, and the kinds of profile those clubs have been able to bring in, and what those players mean to those respective clubs. So without wasting any further ado, unlike most people, I'll begin with the number 1. I won't take you through, the dilly-dallying through number 10, number 8, number 9, and things like that. We'll go straight down to my number 1 top signing of the transfer window this summer. Alexander Isak to Liverpool. For me, that tops everything else. I mean, a player who would have been signed by any top Premier League side, any top European side, only turning 26 later this month. He's still 25. To get him for 125 million pounds in a transfer window where we know that sometimes prices of or transfer fees have been exaggerated and things like that. So for me, is an astronomical deal. Liverpool do get themselves a finished product, a player that is well adapted to the Premier League, a player that they're not going to have any excuses whatsoever. For as long as they give him the service, he guarantees you the goals. 3 seasons at Newcastle, he was banging in the goals. His debut campaign 2022-2023 scored 10 goals, provided 1 assist, and then the subsequent season at 2023-2024 scored 21 goals and provided, I think, about 2 assists or thereabout. Giving him a 23 goal involvement. And then last campaign was arguably his best in that Newcastle jersey, scoring 23 goals and providing 6 assists, and also scored in the Carabao Cup final to help Newcastle win their first major trophy in about 71 years. So for me, we know what he's capable of. He's quite very athletic. He's good with dribbling. He can run deep. He can carry the ball from deep. He's not afraid to make an assist. Although he doesn't make plenty of those in comparison to players like Mo Salah and things like that. But I mean, they do get themselves a finished product, a finished product. So in any case, we're going to expect 25 plus goals. He's capable of scoring as many as 30 in a Premier League season. I know most people have concerns over his overall fitness, over his overall availability. But when you look at his numbers at Newcastle, particularly in the Premier League, first season, 22 games. Second season, 30 Premier League games. And last season, he made 34 appearances in the Premier League alone. So if you do have a player that can average at least 30 games in a Premier League season, you can't give him to me any single day, because the advantage for Liverpool is they also have a player like Hugo Ekitike who can provide the backup for Alexander Isak should he be absent for a mere 8 games. So for me, that feels like not too much of a big deal. If a club plays over maybe 60 games in a Premier League season and he can play 40 of those, sign him up. Because for Liverpool do have the squad that can take them through the other 20 games and they clinch whatever titles or pieces of silverware they could be fighting for. Let's not forget, Mohamed Salah is still at the club, and last season he was the top scorer with 28 goals and providing 18 assists, a record breaker. I think the first player to win the PFA player at 3 different times, and also he has as many as 3 golden boots. So really, there will be no worries. In number 2 is still another Liverpool signing. Liverpool went all out, broke their own transfer record, and signed Florian Wirtz from Bayer Leverkusen for 100 million pounds plus an extra 16 million pounds expected in add-ons. Now, the reason as to why for me comes in number 2: 1, the financial outlet; 2, the talent that he is, the promise that he promises to be. Now, he's not been off to a great start or to a remarkable start for a player of his own price tag, but it is the Premier League. Even the best of talents sometimes need a bit of time to adapt. So For me, it comes number 2 in the best Premier League summer signings of this transfer, of the recently concluded transfer window. I look at him at the age of 22. You look at what he's been able to do at Bayer Leverkusen at 2023-2024, helping them win that German Bundesliga title and the DFB Pokal, including helping them reach the finals of the UEFA Europa League. He had a 22 overall goal involvement, 11 goals and 11 assists. And last season, he managed to score, I think, 10 goals and provided 12 assists. So that's in the German Bundesliga alone. In the Champions League, he's one of those star players on every single match day for the time that, Bayer Leverkusen have been featuring in the UEFA Champions League. And of course, that was for the season of 2024-2025. So big talent. I think he could turn out to be ugly at the end of the season. He could be competing for the Premier League summer signing of the season. For now, we are looking who are those. So for me, he comes second already, and that also relates or to what I did say in our earlier video. You can go out and check it out on the channel. Who had the best transfer window out of the big six in the Premier League? Of course, and I gave that accolade to Liverpool because of the business they were able to do in terms of incomings and outgoings. It wasn't just about spending the money; it was also bringing in some money, and I thought they did that really well. So Florian Wirtz comes in number 2. In number 3, I've gone with a player in Joao Pedro. Joining Chelsea for £60 million from Brighton and Hove Albion is my third best signing of the summer transfer window. The reason for that is particularly how well, again, he's fitted into that Chelsea team. You may think he's played with them for the last 2 years, but that also speaks to the advantage of signing a Premier League proven player, is that they do not need a lot of time to adapt. For as long as they can fit into the new team, then everything else is bound to click. He's already started banging in the goals. He did banging the goals and helped Chelsea win the FIFA Club World Cup. So for me, he comes in at number 3. Do let me know who your top 3 are. Just leave a comment down in the comment section and say my number 1, number 2, number 3 are these, or perhaps even the top 5. Because in number 4, I've gone for Arsenal's Martin Zubimendi. Yes, are there players that would have come number 4? Obviously, but for me, I'm going for Martin Zubimendi. In a transfer window where Arsenal had lost their 2 of their central midfielders in Thomas Partey, leaving at the end of his contract. And subsequently, we know he's joined Villarreal, and then, of course, they did lose Jorginho, letting him out of his contract quite quickly to go and join Flamengo, and he represented them at the FIFA Club World Cup. We know that Arsenal came into this transfer window looking for the perfect replacement for that central midfield role. Of course, they knew that they needed a backup, and that's why they also went to sign Christian Nogan. But for me, the 4th best signing of this transfer window has been Martin Zubimendi. The first insights that we've had of him have looked really good. Yes, in some of the big games, like at Old Trafford, at Liverpool, you could sort of say he wasn't the best version of himself, but he wasn't bad either. But in any case, if you're a new player in the Premier League, having your first out of your first away trips being at Old Trafford and Anfield, that is no easy ask. Let's be honest. But for me, he is the best 4th signing, coming in for about £55 million there in total. I think Arsenal did a great piece of business in that regard at getting themselves Martin Zubimendi. In number 5, I'm going for Manchester United is Bryan Mbeumo. Now, we know that Manchester United last season struggled to score goals. In fact, the squad in the Premier League alone, they could only score 44 goals, conceded as many as 54. Now, one would have argued that, because they conceded more, maybe they needed a defender, maybe they needed a goalkeeper first. Whereas that could be true depending on who is making the argument, or in whichever way you frame the argument. They needed to be scoring more goals on the other side. And they went to Brentford and signed for £71 million in total package. Bryan Mbeumo only turned 26 recently. He did score 20 Premier League goals last season at Brentford, provided 7 assists. So for me, that is a good signing. That is a brilliant signing. Will he click at Manchester United? Only time will tell. But early signs are very positive. We saw him against Arsenal. He looked brilliant, even though they lost that game by 0-0. We saw him score in that game against Grimsby. Very brilliant goal. Although Manchester United ended up being knocked out in the Carabao Cup. Never mind that Grimsby have been then fined £20,000 for fielding an ineligible player because there's a player that was registered 1 minute beyond the deadline. So, but we'll leave that at that for now. But getting Brandon Bomo, we saw him against Burnley score for Manchester United in that 3-2 victory. So he is a very, very good player. And for me, I put him in number 5. In number 6, surprisingly, maybe to some of you, I've gone for Sunderland's Granit Xhaka. Now, Sunderland have made so many signings, including Simon Adingra, including players like Habib Diarra, players like Sadiki, and all the others that they've managed to bring in. But for me, Granit Xhaka, to get a Premier League proven player in Granit Xhaka, a Switzerland captain, we know he spent about 5 years at Arsenal and he did really, really well, especially in his final season. That was 2022-2023. We know about his leadership qualities. For a team like Sunderland, newly promoted to the Premier League out of the Championship, they had to go through the playoffs, in which they beat up against Sheffield United by 2-1 in the final at Wembley. For them to be able to go to Bayer Leverkusen and convince him to join them and straight away be given the armband. Being given the armband is no surprise because he's the captain, of that Switzerland international team. We know he was captain at Arsenal before he was stripped of that role during that Unai Emery era at Arsenal. But his leadership qualities are nothing that you will find every single day or in just any player. So for me, I put him at number 6 as one of the best signings of the summer transfer window. Do let me know if you do agree. If you disagree, again, just leave me a comment down in the comment section and we will engage on this further. In number 7, I've gone for Tijjane Reijnders. I've gone for Tijjane Reijnders at Manchester City. Now, Manchester City have not had the best start. Have not had the best of starts to the Premier League campaigns because they've lost 2 games out of the first 3. But the first game they beat up against Wolverhampton Wanderers by 4-0, lost to Tottenham Hotspur on match day 2 by 2-0, and subsequently lost to Brighton and Hove Albion by 2-1. But that notwithstanding, when you look at Tijjane Reijnders, particularly in that game against Wolverhampton Wanderers, oh my God, you wouldn't miss Kevin De Bruyne for a second watching Tijjane Reijnders. He did score a goal, he provided an assist, and he was crucial in a build-up to one of the other goals. So he looked really, really comfortable. He gelled well with Nico Gonzalez in that midfield. And going forward, I did say that in some games he will struggle because my expectation was that Pep Guardiola will tinker with his team. We know he likes to rotate players, but sometimes he does it unnecessarily. Sometimes he gets to overthink games. And the team, when you look at the team that played Wolverhampton Wanderers, was much different from the team that played at Tottenham Hotspur and subsequently against Brighton. He had still other changes within that setup. So that in itself is bound to impact on his overall performance because we know that sometimes being a good player is all about chemistry with those that you play alongside with. So sometimes when certain pieces are pulled off the chessboard, they are bound to affect you here and there. But nonetheless, it's overall Manchester City also did not have the best of games in those 2 games that they did lose. But when I look at his performance against Wolves, when we go back to his performances at the FIFA Club World Cup, quite a player that did get in there for about £46 million already. A very, very brilliant signing for Manchester City. Now, in number 8, I've gone with Arsenal's Eberechi Eze. Now, Arsenal have struggled to break teams down, especially teams that play with a low block, and we've seen this one too many times against teams like Brentford, against teams like Newcastle, and that kind of thing. They've frustrated them against teams like West Ham United, who beat them last season at home, I think by 0-0, that goal scored by Gerard Bowen. So they needed a player that can play off his cuffs, a player that can really, really drive that ball forward, comfortable playing as a 10, can play off the left wing, and Eberechi is that player. At the age of 27, no need to add that to the Premier League. I think he's going to be a very, very brilliant signing, a very great signing for this Arsenal side. For me, that's what puts him at number 8. In number 9, I'm going to go with João Paulinho. João Paulinho joining Tottenham Hotspur. Now, again, Tottenham Hotspur have brought in other players like Xavi Simons, very, very good player. One player that I really, really admire for his dynamism. At the age of 22, he's proven himself at PSV Eindhoven, at RB Leipzig, and things like that. He can play as a right winger, a left winger, and also as a false 9 or as a 10. He's that versatile a player really. So he is quite a game. They brought in a player like Muhammad Kudus, very, very brilliant player really. And Rando Kolomwani, on loan, brilliant striker there. But for me, it's Joao Paulinho. We know that while Yuvis Bissouma was a good central midfielder, sometimes he struggled. Sometimes his performances were below average in some cases, and they needed an upgrade to that. And they went for a player that has already reached his 30s, in Joao Paulinho. He comes with Premier League experience, having had 2 seasons at Bayern Munich, where he struggled for playing time, but he's Premier League proven. We know they got him from Fulham. He was one of the best central midfielders there was before he left for Bayern Munich. And in any case, it's why Bayern Munich signed him. And for me, that's why I bring him in number 9 as one of the best signings of the transfer window. So far, from what we've seen, he even did score a goal against Manchester City on match day 2 as Tottenham Hotspurs, 1-2 out of 2 in their first 2 games. Their first being a 3-0 victory against Burnley on the opening weekend, and then that 2-0 victory against Manchester City before losing to Bournemouth by 1-0 on match day 3. So I put him at number 9. At number 10, I'm going to go with Jack Grealish to Everton. Yes, it's only a loan deal for Jack Grealish to join Everton. But what a signing. Already 4 assists to his name in the opening 3 games of the season. But remember, he's only started, I think, 2 of those games. As Everton beat up against Wolverhampton Wanderers by 3 goals to 2. And then I think in Everton's victory against Brighton by 2 goals to 1. So, I mean, David Moyes recently said that the best compliment he can pay him is that he is better than he thought he was, and we know there's a very, very decent player in there. We know he's not had the best of seasons in the last 2 campaigns, beyond the aftermath of the 2022-2023 campaign when Manchester City went on to win the treble, the UEFA Champions League, winning the FA Cup, and I think the Premier League title. So him going to Everton, he finds himself good space, a team with lesser pressure, a team where he can be the star of that team. Of course, we know that they've lost the likes of Abdoulaye Diakore and Neil Mopi and so many others that have left the club. And he walks into an Everton side that are comfortable with the manager they have in David Moyes, having returned to the club for the first time since 2013 when he had left to join Manchester United, replacing Sir Alex Ferguson. So for me, he's going to be he's a top signing for Everton, and I won't be surprised if at the end of the season they make that move permanent. Although apparently, if they do wish to make it permanent, it will cost them 50 million euros. Whether they will be committing to that, a player that is 29, that remains to be seen. But he is a very, very decent signing, a very brilliant player for them. Now, you remember when I said I wanted initially to do a top 10, but then I extended it to a top 12? Well, these are the reasons, and these are the 2 players that I thought I should be adding on that list. Now, we're going to have honorable mentions that you'll forgive me, but you give me your opinions regardless. In number 11, I wanted to put Gianluigi Donnarumma. The player of his experience, Gianluigi Donnarumma, at 26 years of age. I mean, we all know he started out his career at AC Milan, and by the age of 19, he was already showing the rest of Europe, the rest of the world, what the kind of goalkeeper he was going to be. Going over to PSG, where he's literally won everything that there is to win, by the FIFA Club World Cup, in which they lost the final at Chelsea by 3 goals to 0. By that, to get that kind of player for 30 million euros is an astronomical deal. Like I said, some of these signings that I'm giving you, that I'm ranking in my top 12, is one to do with the price tag, what the team needed. And we know that Manchester City let go of Ederson Moraes to join Fenerbahce. Now, it is not easy for any goalkeeper to walk into Manchester City and replace Ederson Moraes. We know how good he was. We know, especially playing with his feet. We know the kinds of assists he managed to provide for players like Ilkay Gundogan, Sergio Kun Aguero, Braut Erling Haaland, Omar Mamush, and all the others. You've seen those goals where he goes for that long pass, finds the player on the other side, and they go on to score. We know what he's capable of, really, really. So, coming in to replace him is no easy ask, and I think he's going to be a very, very good goalkeeper. Yes, of course, Manchester City also went on to sign James Trafford back from Burnley for about 31 million pounds. That's okay. And we've seen him start majority of their games or their opening 3 fixtures of the Premier League, for which in some cases he struggled. But nonetheless, he is still a very, very brilliant signing. We know they signed Marcus Bentinelli from Chelsea, the goalkeeper, but that will be just a third choice goalkeeper. Then in number 12, and again, guys, I've struggled to make choices on this one, but I'm going to go for Victor Gyökeres. One, to get Victor Gyökeres for 64 million pounds, especially bearing in mind that Arsenal went in the transfer window when all their fans, what they knew that their priority was one, to get a striker. That was a brilliant deal. We know that the saga in itself dragged on for a bit of time. We know it dragged on for a bit of time, and it dragged on because of the circumstances surrounding making the deal happen. But signing Victor Gyökeres is a brilliant signing. Now, I know he's received a lot of criticism that he doesn't look good against big teams, blah, blah, etc., etc. That's okay. And the reason as to why I say it's okay is because Arsenal struggles have not been with the big teams. When you go back to last season, in which they lost 4 games, none of those games was against the big teams. They lost by a goal to nil to Newcastle, they lost by a goal to nil to West Ham United, and lost to Bournemouth by 2 goals to 1 and 2 goals to nil, respectively. Tell me, are those part of the big teams? I certainly don't want to believe so. And yet those are the teams they lost against. So, if we can't bang in the goals against those teams, then it will all be fine. So, if Victor Gyökeres can bang in the goals against those mid-table teams and the smaller teams, or what you regard as the smaller teams, that is well fine with me. But because we know against big teams, they are capable of coming up with something. Remember when they played Real Madrid, they did not have a striker, yet Declan Rice came up with the free kicks. Mikel Merino scored a brilliant goal. When they went to the Santiago Bernabeu, Bukayo Saka scored a goal. Gabriel Martinelli scored a goal. So I'm not worried about the big games. It is those mid-table teams, it is those fixtures against the smaller teams that you will be concerned with if you are an Arsenal fan. So that completes my 12, my best 12 players or signings of the transfer window. However, before I sign out with you guys, I want to make some honorable mentions. Players that have been signed that I think are going to go on to be really, really brilliant this season. One, Matthias Cunha at Manchester United. Brilliant signing. Brilliant signing. Really. I really, really struggled. I almost wanted him to be within my top 12. But unfortunately, I couldn't find room for him. You can agree, you can disagree with me. Just put it down in the comment section. Then, the other honorable mention I must make. Ryan Cherki at Manchester City. Brilliant signing. Brilliant signing. That's a player that is to watch. Nottingham Forest getting Douglas Luiz. If it can be the Douglas Luiz that left Aston Villa to join Juventus, what a player he does promise to be. What a player he does promise to be. But anyways, there's so many players that we can mention that are going to turn out to be brilliant signings because a lot have been signed. The Premier League spent about £3 billion, on player signings. So there's so many honorable mentions that we can sit here and discuss about. But I thought those are players that we cannot ignore. Willian Estavao at Chelsea. Willian Estavao at Chelsea. Remember that name. Remember that name. It's going to be a brilliant signing. Like I said, when I was talking about João Paulinho, Xavi Simons is a brilliant signing. Xavi Simons is a brilliant signing. Nick Voltman or Nick Voltmada at Newcastle. If it does click, it's going to be a brilliant signing. If it does click, it's going to be a brilliant signing. We're talking about a player who Bayern Munich really, really wanted to sign. However, we're not willing to pay the 80 million euros that Newcastle agreed to pay. So we know he's going to be another brilliant, brilliant player. Really, in as far as this transfer window is concerned. So do let me know what your thoughts are, guys. Who are your top signings of the transfer window? Do you agree with my submissions or do you disagree? Do let me know down in the comment section and let's discuss this further. We'll continue the engagement. Otherwise, if you're new, do not forget to kindly subscribe to the channel and do not forget to like, comment and share with your colleagues. But more importantly, leave me your thoughts down in the comment section and I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye for now.